When I got to MTV, it was about 1995, and this was one of the few properties that felt like it had theatrical potential. Abby Turkuli brought me the project, which was one of his favorites, and he said, if there's anything you can make of this weird little animated show, it could make a great movie. I looked at it and I thought, it's going to be challenging because the shorts and the series were really not what you would normally sort of see as a storyline for a movie, but so intriguing and such a unique character and such a great world that it felt like it did have elements as a feature.
He did a good job. Yes. You're me.
We were called up by MTV Films in '99 and asked if we had interest in Aeon Flux.
And like many people, we wondered, I think at that point we'd both been fans of the show, and it doesn't immediately present itself as a likely adaptation.
Right. I mean,
its style is so aggressively anti-narrative. It's basically a series of experimental films.
It's not your traditional movie format. The lead character dying in every episode.
It was experimental in the sense of just trying to always do things that I hadn't seen done, which I imagined might be possible. I'm always trying to see what the limits are of what you can do with the film medium, especially with animation.
It's fascinating because it's not intended to be something that you can grasp on a first glance or that you're supposed to necessarily ever have answers for. That was a big challenge in terms of making the movie. It was not clear at the beginning.
Amazing location you found. This looks exactly like a background from the show.
There's actually a lot here that is like the show. I mean, what we're putting them actually in this little enclave back here. If you want to take a look.
It's very surreal. Yeah, it's like, especially actually to see Aeon and Trevor embodied in flesh and blood, and moving and talking and running, and actually striking a lot of the same poses and compositions from drawings that I'd done.
My name's Robin Richardson, and I'm working as a storyboard artist on the film Aeon Flux, and we're going to be shooting in Berlin starting in June. There's a frame in the cartoon in the very beginning. Kind of one of her signature things is that Aeon Flux is so in control of her body and her mind that she's able to capture a fly within her eyelashes. And she kind of gets seen as this assassin, this kind of living Venus flytrap character. And so I did these color renderings of her eye capturing the fly, trying to make it look as much like Charlize's eye as possible.
So as a feature with different challenges and also different goals, it was important for us to be inspired by his series and yet to create characters that the audience could follow from beginning to end.
It was important with the original series that we kind of honor its weirdness and spirit and try to pay homage to its sort of aesthetic boldness and just its sort of strange energy.
The challenge was to come to them then with an idea that tried to honor the show and tried to be as hopefully energetic and passionate and crazy as the show, but still have a mainstream Hollywood narrative that could actually be made today.
And also to create a thriller where nothing is as it seems. There is the perfect lie at the heart of Bregna. And I think that is completely consistent with what Peter Chung's vision for his series was.
And create something that can exist alongside it as a companion,
right.
rather.
Like not a replacement or not a extension, really a companion.
Action.
We hadn't written any science fiction before this, so they really were taking a real chance on us. But what we saw in it was the ability to have a love story, that in the guise of this big science fiction movie, it was really a love story, and that was what pulled us through the entire movie. And I think that's from the very beginning what the producers and the studio saw in this, is the possibility to have what really is an epic love story in the trappings of a huge science fiction world that we could meticulously try to bring to life.
This is about sort of an intelligent approach to a really unique property.
I think from the beginning the idea was to take the ideas and the characters and the settings. I think that a lot of the very recognizable motifs from the animation have been carried over. It's a completely different take on the same characters. I didn't really have a hand in writing the script. My involvement was reading the different drafts and making notes and comments and suggestions, and meeting with the writers and the director during the process.
He really was very gracious in letting us take this great property and doing what we do with it. And at the same time, it's been great for him to rebirth this program and this cartoon because it's something near and dear to him. So I think when you can revive something unique like this, I think it's the best thing for the creator, and I think he's really thrilled to be able to have people rediscover, a whole new generation rediscover Aeon Flux.
I didn't know too much about Aeon Flux as a person or as the animated series when I started working on this, but I was familiar with Karan Kasama's work. And when I read the script, I was really blown away by how inventive it was and how it was about this completely other world that was really interesting.
When you approach science fiction, you have to accept that you're creating a world that people sort of either reject or accept, but the purpose of the genre is to create a world with its own rules and with its own sort of logic and its own tone.
It's this futuristic world that's in some ways high-tech, but it's also extremely organic. And that was one of the things I really was excited about in this script, was the possibility that it opened up of basing things on reality, but then just taking them to like a super heightened reality where weapons are related to plants.
One kind of overriding distinction I wanted to make in terms of what kind of sci-fi it was that it was more of an organic world and less sort of hardware-driven, less sort of technology-driven, in that a lot of the technology would be primarily invisible or be kind of utilizing very simple elements, particularly water.
Karan was very specific about like making everything kind of evolve design-wise from the plant world and the animal world as opposed to the technological world. Like, for example, there's no video screens anywhere. Everything's reflected on water. It's, you know.
A lot of the weapons are, you know, especially in the garden, are, you know, are plants, or at least kind of evolved.
The guise of a plant.
Yeah.
Or other.
There's the interesting juxtaposition of nature and danger, nature and Big Brother surveillance. And yet at the same time, it's all very beautiful.
Just like this huge creative base to go from, where things can be really visually interesting and not science fiction in the way that we traditionally think of science fiction, where everything is just about metal and gears and industrial and the post-apocalyptic industrial age. I mean, it is a post-apocalyptic age in Aeon Flux, but it isn't like your average environment.
I sort of was moving away from a kind of dark, apocalyptic, gray, rainy sort of standard in a way, because I think a lot of sci-fi utilizes those qualities really beautifully, but I felt like in a way what was such a great opportunity with Aeon Flux was that you could create a world that was quite sort of sunny and often beautiful and sort of on the surface somewhat untroubled, and that you could go deeper with the world and discover that there were, you know, many secrets and many sort of strains on the society.
She disappeared 2 months ago.
I think that was really exciting to think of the future in that very different way.
It was just a way of trying to see a kind of future that was not, you know, what we always refer to as the burning trash can future, where some people are huddled around a burning trash can, or there's a fire inside a TV set and everyone's wearing burlap.
Yeah, burlap is key to the future.
There's no burlap in this movie, fortunately.
You know, movies like Blade Runner are clearly sort of at the forefront of science fiction movies, but I think it was important for us to build a world that really felt unique for it in and of itself. In fact, I'm really hoping that it feels like it stands on its own and doesn't feel derivative of other science fiction movies. I can't really think of any that it's exactly like.
Initially, I liked how dark the piece was, actually. I liked how conflicted the story was, how these people living in this small world of Bregna they had so many questions about life, only to be met with death and the realization and the importance of death. And those were things that I thought in film are somewhat lacking in storytelling today. So that was initially the thing that kind of grabbed me, this woman who was kind of on this quest to try and understand why they were living and why they were here and why something was wrong inside them. And all of that made it very mysterious too, which I quite liked.
This one was corrupted. Destroy it.
Your DNA is good.
Destroy it.
What I love about science fiction is that it's speculative fiction, really. It gives you an opportunity to examine what's going on in the world today and extrapolate into the future, what the consequences are of our actions.
Like, there's so little known about what's going to go wrong. I mean, like, the assumption, of course, is that something's going to go wrong with the genetically engineered food, and I think there's so much, there's so many headlines about that today.
We think that we have control over science. We think we have control over agriculture. We think that we know all of the answers, and the truth is that we don't.
There's all kinds of theories going on, and it seems to me that the world that we live in, we're saturated with all kinds of desensitizing both of ourselves and the reality of the world around us.
You know, like the idea of cloning and the idea of biological advancements. You just use that really not as a scientific question, but more as a gateway to be speculation as to what does that mean.
With a film like Aeon Flux, you can look into the future and project what could result from some of the decisions we're making today.
Something is wrong with us, Aeon. With everybody.
So many of the problems that this futuristic world, goes through is I think things that we're already struggling with today.
And the idea of a society where everything is actually, it's a utopia. It's on the surface, everyone is taken care of. Everyone's fed, on some level, everyone's supposed to be happy, but everyone has this sense, which I actually think, in the modern world, many people do, of like, there's just something not right. There's something wrong with the way we're living.
We have different ways of solving problems.
Yes, you ignore that.
So I like the idea that there was somebody writing about something that is actually is happening. We're all becoming, kind of blasé about life. We're becoming clones, if you like, even now. So it said something to me about, this is looking at how we live and how we treat each other. And that appealed to me.
I think those are the things in the story that people will ultimately relate to, because they're becoming our struggles now. They're not so far away.
We might be lucky enough to end up in Bregna, or we might be, we might just wipe everything out. I don't know.
We are a lonely outpost, a tiny band.
I think the first thing that I need to concentrate on is to make an entertaining film. I think that everything else has to work within the structure of a film that, first and foremost, is terrific entertainment.
Good boys.
That maximizes the performances of the actors, gives them something to do, someone to play, and then also provides an opportunity for the plot of the film to delve into areas that perhaps are newly treated and fresh and interesting, so that there are multiple layers to the filmmaking process and to the storytelling.
Things aren't quite, it's not so much good is, bad is, this person is this person is that. It's not formulaic in the way that many action movies are and futuristic movies are. And so it has sort of a bit more nuance and shade and light. And also, the sort of very strong and the physically very strong characters are women, which is quite unusual.
I think there are always new ways to invent and reinvent strong female characters in the science fiction genre. And Aeon Flux certainly provided the opportunity to do that, not only on the script level, but once we hired Charlize Theron to bring her to life.
You don't really have your stock character that's just trying to sort of kill the bad guys. This is a complex character that is, first and foremost, an interesting person.
It's not enough.
Our minds are unraveling, and every time you bring us back, it gets worse.
She's a woman who is very strong, quite a free thinker, and someone who doesn't quite always trust everything around her, questions a lot of what's happening around her in the society that she lives.
We're meant to die.
That's the exciting thing about casting women in these roles, is the elements and the choices that the actors themselves bring to the role. And I just can't imagine Aeon Flux now without Charlize.
The greatest arc for her is that she thinks that this one thing, this one mission will change her life and make things better, and then actually what happens is it just opens a big can of worms as to her existence. And she has to make some really tough decisions.
There's an emotional component to Charlize that is appropriate for this movie without it being a sort of out of context. And she got it so well. And when she read the script, clearly something clicked in her that if she's going to do an action movie or something with this kind of science fiction action component, that she wanted to choose something smarter, something that had a little bit more of a cerebral element, as well as sort of the kick-ass action elements that she had fun doing. And I think it's just impossible to imagine someone else doing it.
This is a genre that I'm not that familiar with. I've never done a film based in the future like this, and so I had to kind of look at things that I do relate to, and that was that for me at the heart of this, you know, whether it was 400 years from now or a contemporary, it was a love story. It was two people trying to understand why they feel a certain way about each other. And obviously there's elements that complicate the love story a little bit more, but at the end of the day, it is an old-fashioned love story, and very much because of Karen's direction. I mean, she really took the elements of love in this film and shot them in very classic 1940s filmic styles of love. I don't know how else to describe it, but just kind of very classic, and I like that.
It's you.
I think when I read the script, what I really did connect to was that there was something genuine about the romance. There's something very pure about the elements of the story that played like a love story, and something very simple about people kind of connecting to something beyond what they just see. There's something they feel that's deeper.
It goes so much deeper than your cure. Other women have been getting pregnant naturally.
It's not a typical science fiction film, as I understand them. I think that's its strength. It's not so divorced from reality. It's maintained, relatively speaking, it's maintained its humanity. There's a logic that is not necessarily a consecutive logic, so it is otherworldly, and it is in the realms of fantasy, but the characters are grounded in some form of humanity involving emotion and psychology.
What was she looking for?
Her sister, Una.
It's a fresh take on science fiction that is influenced by a lot of things that are happening today, has a great foundation from Peter Chung that I don't think anybody can compare it to.
I think that it's unique. I don't think that it's trying to emulate another science fiction film or to be in the tradition of a particular science fiction genre. It has forged a new path and has redefined a genre that will continue to redefine itself through the years.
What we set out to do, and what I hope we can accomplish with Aeon Flux, is that an audience can watch the film and feel like they've experienced a sort of humanist expression of sci-fi. An expression of sci-fi that challenges the audience to think about where they are in their own life and ask questions about what it means to be alive. To challenge the audience to look not just at this world that's been put in front of them that's so different, perhaps, from the world they live in, but to reflect back and ask questions about the world they live in now.
You know, initially the idea that Karin brought to us was shooting this movie in Brazil.
When I'd first come onto the movie, I had wanted very much to shoot in the capital city of Brazil, which is called Brasilia.
She brought these pictures in from Brasilia, which was a completely manufactured, man-made, kind of utopian city that was created in the 50s.
That city was created by one architect as a thing unto itself for that people were going to come to,
and literally an island in the jungle.
Right.
Kind of similar to what we're talking about.
Yeah, so they kind of started from scratch on an entire city.
That was exciting because it was a real-life city that you'd never seen shot before, and it really was an extension of what we can imagine in the future. It was considered to be a futuristic city.
It's a city that worked beautifully for the last city on Earth, a city of 5 million. And it is surrounded by jungle and had all the earmarks of the Bregna that we had scripted in Aeon Flux.
Bregna birthed itself there in so many ways. That's where Karin and I exploded with the possibility of knowing that it truly, the energy of Niemeyer's work in Brasilia was seminal to us, knowing that Bregna existed as a possibility.
Well, the practicalities didn't merely make it possible to shoot the movie in Brazil.
And so we were looking for a city that had a sort of infrastructure, enough film crew to actually sort of be crewing from that city to some degree, and had really, really interesting architectural statements.
So we looked around the world for other opportunities that would work financially as well as creatively and practically.
We looked at other cities with the kind of vibrant architecture that Brasilia affords. And there was one city that worked even better for this film. In the original series of Aeon Flux, it's a divided city. Voila, a city that was recently divided and reunited Berlin.
It started to just make a whole lot of sense. In some ways, even more sense than the original concept of Brasilia.
They decided at least to come and check the places here in Berlin, and we spent twice a week here visiting, I think, about 70 different locations.
But they had the idea that it could work in Berlin. That was the most important thing, and we had those great locations like Tierheim and Crematorium and the House of World Culture.
Berlin then sort of revealed itself with all these great architectural structures.
It just ended up being, for an architecture buff, a kind of playground of influences. Really, really beautiful kind of aesthetic environments that we could shoot in as opposed to build, which in our case was something we were looking for. We were looking for a city that could actually have a kind of location quality and not be a strict, build from the ground up.
We were able to pretty swiftly, it surprised us, piece together possibilities which were very different sometimes. For example, the handler space. In Brasilia, it had been a very simple tube with a lace of growth holding close to the inside of a tube. And then there we were standing in the handler space going, this is just fantastic. This is an amazing 1790 building with all this tracery of terracing again going up there, and we just looked at each other, this is the handler space. And I don't know, I mean, why would it be as such? And we just thought it's like the inside of a nautilus shell or something like, it had a quality of otherworldliness.
Handler, Aeon, we have an assignment.
It was surprising for me how different places from different centuries even could work together in that way. For example, the handler space, this anatomical theater, which is from the late 18th century.
Das ist der Langhansbau, im Volksmund auch Trichintempel genannt. Er wurde 1790 fertiggestellt, und zwar als Tierarzneischule. Das wurde über den Grafen von Lindenau die Initiative ergriffen, dieses Gebäude zu bauen, weil Friedrich der Große Tierärzte für seine Pferde haben wollte.
A pure classicistic interior, but it has the same reduced, simple lines that work, I think, very good together with a brand new architecture as the crematorium and other places we are shooting.
And it was a perfect opportunity to use existing architecture with the kind of backstory that Berlin provided us to shoot in the waterworks. These amazing brick vaulted structure, to be able to film in a jewel box of a theater, one of the few to survive the bombings of World War II intact. And yet at the same time, to be able to film in an animal shelter that is perhaps the most modern and the most concerned with the welfare of the animals, such as Tierheim, which portrayed the government zone of the city. And then to film in the Wind Canal, where Hitler's Third Reich studied engines. Truly, you know, an amazing journey for us as filmmakers, as well as locations for the film.
Aesthetically, Karin went there to look at it and make sure it would work, and found the locations that could piece together to make this coherent world. And we then rewrote the script to tailor it to specific locations as well. Some of the action sequences happen in very specific real places. We very meticulously wrote and rewrote some of the action to take advantage of the opportunities of the actual buildings that was going to take place in.
If international productions come to Berlin, they are always interested to find places that are in a way brand new, that had never been seen in big movies.
It's not a city you've seen a million times. Is the other thing. A lot of these places, there's a couple, the steps of Sanssouci is like an incredible cultural artifact for the Germans, and it had never been allowed to be shot in a feature film before.
We were quite lucky to shoot in Sanssouci. The first time as well that we had had the permission to shoot the terrace of Sanssouci, and it's always kind of a hard job to convince people and make things work.
Sanssouci is to Berlin similar as Versailles to Paris. The Prussian king had the main palace in the center of the city in the 18th century, but they had their summer palaces on the countryside. That's the origin of this beautiful garden, and it's a sort of Arcadia.
That's something no one has seen, that incredible piece of architecture on film before this, and there's obviously something really great about that.
We use spaces like that had been kind of largely forgotten, or were sort of emotionally charged spaces that hadn't really been open to the public. We were very, very lucky to be able to use them for the first time. What was called the Wind Canal, which is a giant series of cylinders, interconnected cylinders with huge steel louvered sort of doors. I mean, it's a giant space.
This wind tunnel was used for airplane design testing. It was built in 1932 until 1934, and in 1933 the Nazis took over, and very soon or very fast they would put a lot effort on military research. They use it for every kind, for every detail of airplane design.
The Wind Canal, I just got so excited about the possibility of being able to, there was 8 camera angles that you could shoot there and make it pretty much a never-ending journey through there, but it wasn't a maze as such, and it was written as a maze, and we had been thinking as a maze, but here we were in this other circular space which you could keep going through and coming back on yourself. So again, we were turned on by it. It's unique, and I think we've probably got the best spaces in Berlin.
This spot where we are right now is like only a small part of a big campus where aerospace research in Germany was done. This was a center of aerospace research in Germany until 1945, starting in 1912. They were testing airplanes. This was like technical control of airplane engines. And after 1945, all the technology was taken out by the Russians and brought to Russia, and they were used for the Soviet air and space research programs.
Aesthetically, it really worked because I think there's a lot of really interesting, beautiful, kind of monumental but modern, minimal kind of architecture there that really suited the vision of this kind of like clean, organic utopia.
We use a couple of buildings that had been built during the last 10 years, and as for example the crematorium, a wonderful place with its monumental simplicity, where it was strictly forbidden up to now any shooting by reasons of dignity, which is in a way understandable. The crematorium has been designed by a very popular and famous architect in Germany, Axel Schultes. In my point of view, a very good example of this idea how the movie or how Bregna should look with this simple, monumental architecture. And that's why I think it's quite a good place for its use, how it has been designed as a crematorium.
If you're trying to create a world of the future, you don't want people recognizing buildings as the county courthouse or, you know,
Phil's house.
My house briefly came up as a possible to shoot the movie in.
There's a dog and cat rescue center that's built like nothing you've ever seen before, and these are not sort of usual, typical locations you'd find in a movie and not used for those purposes.
You're here in the shelter of Berlin. It's the only shelter in Berlin, and therefore we are one of the largest shelters in the world. We take care of about 800 animals a day.
In June, the construction came in the first place. We had like 100 people constructing the whole shelter into a complete different place. As you can see, we have more or less only concrete walls here, but when they were done, we had even more. And we were like so surprised because they were looking so real that we had visitors coming here and saying, well, what did you do here? Is this all real, or are you building another shelter, or what are you doing here, you know? And we told them, well, it's a movie which is done here, and it's Hollywood coming to Berlin. And it was really nice for all our visitors to see this. Especially the Cherry Groove was was fantastic, because there were, in our open day, over 19,000 people standing in front of those cherry trees, about 10 meters away from them, and telling us, well, how do you do this in October to have cherry trees like this? They look so good, you know. This must be true.
You know, there was always a solution in Berlin, and both the people there helped us find the solutions, and I think if you look carefully behind what sort of your initial impression of the city, there's an enormously rich range of architectural structures, of just atmosphere in the city, and then, you know, they had very decent stages as well.
Berlin happened to have enough spaces that were just sort of strange enough and weird enough and special enough that they actually kind of felt like they were part of the world of Aeon Flux.
Berlin turned out to be a perfect place to make the movie.
The physical aspect of this movie was something that I felt very challenged by.
With Charlize, she's right on with everything she does. She's so easily adjustable. When we started teaching her the gymnastics, she took to it like like she'd been doing it for years and years and years, you know. So, but she comes from a dancing background also, so she's very physical. And being a model, I think she has a real understanding of her body and where her body is at all times and how to adjust it to make it look the right way, or the way the audience wants to see it.
Yeah. That's it. Now start to crunch your legs right there. Let's slip it. There it is. That's it.
Arch your back, don't roll your back. And we spent about 3 months working with Charlize on just movement and training, just trying to get her strong enough to do a lot of the movement that we wanted to do with her.
It was something that, I don't know, I got very excited about, to see how far I could actually push myself and how many new things I could learn to do on my own on this film, and to really physically feel like I was this character, to not just go, well, I'll just do this and let the stunt people do that. I mean, physically, I got excited about pushing my body to that limit.
She trained for months before we started shooting. Charlize worked in kind of I guess a sort of interdisciplinary way. She worked in a kind of gymnastic way. She worked in capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial art. She worked just on sort of specific stunts over and over again so that she could do them herself. Her training was intense. It was definitely a sort of strength, speed, agility training, which is hours of every day.
I trained for about 3.5, 4 months with Charlie Crockwell, who's the stunt coordinator, and his crew, Mika and Terry. And Terry performed with Cirque du Soleil for 20 years, and he really helped me with the gymnastics and acrobatic work and trampoline work and wire work. You know, I had done Monster and didn't do anything with my body for 2 years. So physically, even though I had lost the weight, I had to really go and build some muscle back and get some strength back and just get physically to a place where I felt stronger and capable of doing the things that I had to do in this film.
I think if you're naturally flexible, you have a tendency to stay that way or stay close to being flexible. You don't let it fall apart. And she didn't. She's always kept in good shape. You can see with Monster what she did to herself, and she got her weight down quickly. We took off some of what was the residual that was left from Monster, but she was determined to get into great shape for this picture, and she did a great job doing it. We spent 6 months with Karen, just discussing the picture and the character and the way the character moves, and not just Charlize, but Sophie and all of the other actors as well.
Charlize had already started training before I got cast, so I had to kind of catch up quite quickly. And about 5 weeks before we started filming, I arrived in Berlin and started a training regime, which was incredibly enjoyable, but after about the 3rd week, I was beginning to think, what have I let myself in for?
3, 2, 1.
I didn't let them know that I was quite scared of heights. You know, when I got the part, they said, "Oh, you fit?" Yes, I'm very, very fit. And you kind of, as an actor, you tend to say, "Yes, I can do everything. Yes, I can ride a horse," and just so you can get the part. And I didn't let them know that I was quite scared of heights. And on the first day I got here, I was kind of 50 foot up on a wire, having to leap off into midair. And it certainly cured my fear of heights.
Action, Billy! Swell!
I've never in my life played anything like this, and so it's all completely new to me.
Yeah! Oh, that was so cool!
You know, it was interesting because they were both worried sick about the other one at the beginning. There was almost a competition, because Charlize would ask me, well, how's Sophie doing? What's Sophie, you know, when does Sophie begin her training? And what are you going to start with Sophie? And then Sophie would say the same thing about Charlize. And so I had to constantly go, oh, no, well, Charlize is nowhere near what you are. And then Charlize, oh, no, Sophie's nowhere near what you are. But they're two completely different people, and there's no way you could really ever compare them, because one can do one thing and one can do another thing. Although we had to get to a place where Charlize plays Sophie's mentor. So there has to be something in Sophie's movement that is kind of reminiscent of her training with Charlize. And that's where a lot of the kind of the more insect-like qualities come from. So there are places that we've worked those things into, but it's not in your face, really strong and apparent that it's there. It all comes from training. You really have to look at the actor and assess them and see what kind of abilities they just naturally have and what you can train them to do, and then work off of those strengths, I think, and trying to put that into the film.
Not everyone has that ability to delve into a character on not only an intellectual and a dramatic level, but on a physical level. Our stunt people were astonished that she outperformed the stunt people. 95% of the stunts you see in the film were performed by Charlize. She's completely aware of where her body is and has an elegance and a quickness that I've just never seen before, nor had our stunt coordinators.
It was important to me to know that if I could believe myself in doing these things, then it wasn't so futuristic, then it wasn't so unrealistic. And those are the questions that I ask myself every time we do a stunt, you know. I know I'm being helped by a wire, or I know I have, you know, mats around me and there's a secure blanket around it, but to know that you can actually get as close as you possibly can to doing it, I think helps tremendously with playing a character like this.
For the fight scene, it's basically a fight between my character Freya and Charlize's character Aeon. And I had to undergo some training because never done anything like this. I have to jump from, I think, a 15 to 20 foot balcony. So yeah, I had to train for the jumping off the balcony. And every morning, the team of trainers, the stunt team, were fantastic on this job. They'd lead me through some stretches and some physical strength exercises, just so that, you know, I can take all the force that's going to be thrown at me on the day.
We combined a lot of things. We combined capoeira with Krav Maga. I mean, all kinds of judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, a lot of just down and dirty street fighting, finishing holds we've laid into this. So it's one particular kill. It could be 3 different arts combined.
And for me, it's great because I've never done anything action-related. I always wanted to. So this is a great opportunity for me.
It's, you know, it's been quite exciting, really, and quite exhausting.
And now!
You know what's nice about this picture is that the action isn't being done for action's sake. It's being done because it motivates the story, or it moves the story along. And I much prefer that, because in watching the picture, you don't say, oh, there's a stunt, because they wanted to blow something up. And that's what I like about this, is it really fits into the story. Hopefully you don't have any idea that people watching go, where were the stunts? I don't even know the stunts. All that movement stuff, all the people falling and killing, and, you know, we're all stunts.